Welcome to this episode of the Embryo Advocates podcast. Today, I am joined by Kim Smeenk, who is working with the Family Life Center, a maternity home near Grand Rapids, Michigan. Kim, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's an honor to have you here. How would you describe yourself and your professional background as you serve the unborn and their mothers?
Yeah. Thank you for having me first off. It's kind of a cool opportunity to talk about this and just share in our beliefs. So that's awesome. I would describe myself as a person who always thought she was going to work. I was going to be career driven. And then God just kind of intervened in that and said, well, that's not really who you are. So I am currently an ER nurse. I just do 2 days a month in the ER. So something very simple. I am a stay-at-home mom the other days that I'm not at Family Life Center. So I do homeschooling for my 5-year-old. I have a 5, 3, and 1-year-old, so we're busy. And then I work at the Family Life Center. Currently, I manage a program for them that supports women and families walking through miscarriages. And in the past, I was what they call their house manager. So
Okay, awesome. And I met you originally working in the ER. I was a nursing assistant and you were a nurse. And I think at some point we'd had some conversations about abortion because over time you've had a little bit of a change of how you viewed abortion. Because at one point you felt that maybe it should be legal for cases where otherwise medical complications would result. And you were telling me at one point, we went out for coffee and we were talking about, pro-life issues, and you knew I was volunteering at the sidewalk counselor, so we were discussing that. And you mentioned to me that you picked up a book that actually started to kind of persuade you away from supporting legal abortion in those cases where otherwise complications might result in a pregnancy. So will you tell me a little bit about that journey? Because you are someone with a significant medical background. Because you mentioned how now you're working 2 days a week in the ER, but when we met, you were a full-time ER nurse and you were very busy serving a lot of patients, and I'm sure some of them did have abortion complications.
yeah,
So it's makes total sense that that would be a concern on your mind as someone who is trying to discern through the issue of abortion.
yeah. Um, I think the best way to describe it is I always knew the choice was wrong, right? I always had that biblical background. Like life is important and we need to value it. But where I came from as a nurse was what about the women who would choose to go do this illegally? What is going to be the outcome for them? They're going to come to my ER. Those are going to be women that I do serve. Um, and yeah, I have served women that have made that choice, unfortunately. So I think it just complicated the belief. And I sat in this gray area for a long time trying to figure out what that looks like. And my husband was very adamant, like, Kim, this is wrong. Why would you have this part? And I said, well, it's because of my experience. And uh, we were at a bookstore and we picked up a book that specifically spoke to the topic. It was called The Unexpected Choice. And it was written by a past abortionist. So she was someone who she said, fell into the trade of performing abortions and really didn't have a relationship with the Lord to understand why that was so significant in her spiritual walk. And then as she got to know the Lord again and she got to see the truth, she realized what she had been doing was wrong and now talks on that subject specifically. And really what changed my mind was she gave so many numbers from different countries because the US doesn't really track medical statistics leading to abortion, unfortunately, um, as well as like mental health issues connected to abortion. And something that hit me because my past, where my passion comes from, is I've had 4 miscarriages. So I've had life in me 4 times and I've lost it. And it's been its own process of grief every time. But um, what hit me was the fact that I've had a miscarriage does increase my risk for mental health, but it was almost 50 times the amount from making the choice and losing that baby for the mental health process overall, which is just a really tough number. So while I was just looking at one aspect of the medical side, I would say, I was forgetting all of the other medical complications that come whether you make the choice or not. And I also think I was forgetting that even though we have free will and can exercise that, there are still consequences that come with our free will and that God warns against. So those consequences unfortunately can be that mental or physical health. And yeah, they may come to my ER, but I guess I rather treat them and be able to talk through those consequences, the guilt, the shame that's all established with that, than to say that this is an okay thing to do.
Right. And it's amazing too that God brought the right resource into your life, someone who had a lot of medical knowledge, being an obstetrician. I also read her book later. At the time of you telling me about it, I'd never read it. I didn't know this story called Unexpected Choice by Patti Giebink. And it is a really powerful book because this woman talks about how, like you said, she didn't plan to become an abortionist. She didn't think, oh, yes, that sounds like my dream job. Most people working in some type of abortion facility did not see it as their dream job at any point in their career, but many of them just land in it. Um, and you're right. She has a really helpful explanation about like how it is not in the best medical interest of the mother to have an abortion for either her physical health or her mental health. And it's really interesting how, God brought that book into your life and then it really started to transform your perspective. And you could see how the impact of abortion is incredibly devastating for both
Yeah.
mother and child. So it's really cool to hear how God brought you to that conclusion. Because I mean, even at the time we were having that conversation, I was a nursing assistant. I'm like, I don't know if I can say anything profoundly persuasive in this situation, but hearing from an obstetrician was kind of like that nail in the coffin for you. It's like, okay, I see this person who herself, she was persuaded that this was necessary and even
Yeah.
performed the abortions. And then you came out of that view and became 100% pro-life. And
Yeah.
now, not only are you pro-life, but you have this anti-abortion job. You're working with women to help them to choose life. And when they choose life and they have these needs, that they may need housing and support. That's something that is just so needed for these women, and you're there providing those incredible resources for them. So, what a journey you've been on! It's really
Yeah.
incredible. So, what was the journey from, you're starting to, become more pro-life as you read this book, and you're
Sure.
working as an ER nurse. How did you get connected to Family Life Center, and what do they do, and why did you think their mission was special?
Yeah. So it was around the time that I had my first child. It was after that. We had two miscarriages prior to her. She was just over a year old, and we had gone on a camping trip, and we're headed back home because it started to rain. So we came home a little earlier than planned. And as we're coming home, I see this mom to mom sale on the corner of 48th and Bauer. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, what is this place? I can always use new clothes. Fun fact about us, we never find out what our children are. So we never know if it's a girl or a boy. And we always needed clothes because of that. So I stopped down at that sale. I was curious too. They always had a sign up on that corner that says 24-hour diapers and wipes. And I thought maybe the church put it on, or I wasn't really sure. I thought maybe the house next door was the church's. It was all confusing. So I never really looked into it because it wasn't a need for us. And so we stopped. We did the mom to mom sale, and I talked to a volunteer and the executive director at the time, and they began to tell me what Family Life Center was. And it sunk so deeply into me just that there was a maternity home in the area that serves women and children. And I signed up to volunteer that night. So that was my entry into the journey. And it was very easy process to get in, volunteer, get the background check done. For me, I was looking to do more like the medical stuff and be an advocate for them. So going to appointments with the women or driving them. At the time with my daughter too, if I could drive them, I was so excited because I would just tell my daughter we're going to go serve. I'd put her in the back seat. We'd go, we'd pick up a woman. I'd have conversations with them and build relationship with them in the car. I'd drop them off and either come pick them up later or someone else would pick them up because that's kind of how their volunteers work. So that's really what started me in a Family Life Center. And then from there, I just had kind of a heart calling, like that Holy Spirit moment of, I need to know a little bit more. And I met with the executive director and kind of dove deeper into what Family Life Center is and their mission and what they want to do. And nothing really came of it. I'm always the kind of person who opened the door and God just slammed it in my face, or if you're ready, just start like inching me towards where I need to go. And so I thought, okay, it's closed, whatever. And then about 3 months later, I get an email and she said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's changing. It was going to be the house parents were leaving. The house manager was moving up to a different role. And the house mom wanted to stay on staff and be house manager, but she needed 2 days versus the regular 5 day schedule. And they said, we think you would be the perfect fit to do the other half. Didn't even really interview. I just sat down with them because I've known all of them at this time for about a year and a half, um, and built relationship and talked and said, "This is what the role is. Are you interested?" And very quickly, I felt like, yeah, that was what God was leading me to do. And so I kind of came into the home and started working with the women weekly, every other day. So
It's amazing. And the Ministry of Family Life Center is so life-changing for so many moms. So now you came into this role and you're serving them on an even deeper level as many of them are experiencing unplanned pregnancy and are in this difficult situation of their life. So what is the Ministry of Family Life Center and how does this maternity home change women's lives?
yeah. So our mission is to help moms experiencing unplanned pregnancies and essentially prepare them and transform them. So we're preparing them for the things to come as new moms and how it's going to look to serve a child and themselves in this world, but also just transforming their heart. A lot of them come from broken families. A lot of them come from no support, no help. Beliefs that are just built on falsehoods, right? And they have a lot to be broken down that needed to be reestablished. And so it is a Christ-centered ministry that's in the mission statement to demonstrate Christ's love to these women. We have church, we have a Bible basic study, we have like nutrition classes, parenting classes, sexual integrity, so they don't get themselves in this situation again. Just different things that we want to educate them on, things that they might not have been told before, and really let them see a different side of the world and through a different lens without all of that junk in their past. It's really difficult. It's never easy to bring someone who has a trauma mindset into a new place and to break down all of those falsehoods at one time. So, the maternity home is really just an introduction to all of it. And we get to build relationship, and that relationship gets to be kept. And then we get to establish more roots for them as we move forward. So I'm more of that like establish the relationship part in that role at that time,
Mhm.
where you're going to show them who God is with your actions and not always your words. You're going to teach them what they haven't learned, and then hope that those seeds are going to land and we can carry that onward past the maternity home stage.
And how do women get connected with Family Life Center? How do they find you guys? And what kind of circumstances are they typically facing?
So they can get connected in multiple ways. 211 is probably our biggest referral that we hear of. So they'll call saying, "We're homeless, I'm pregnant. This is one of the things that's going on in my life." And that automatically says, "Hey, you could try this facility." And they give them information to apply. We have our website. People can find us online too. Sometimes you'll get it from like the church community where churches are working with single women that got pregnant. And so they're trying to support and they want them to apply. That can be a little bit difficult sometimes just because us asking someone to apply and to find this place is one thing, but the heart behind it and then making that decision is a whole nother thing.
Mhm.
Um, so those would probably be our main referrals. If you type abortion like in Grand Rapids too, our website should be one of like the sponsored ads on there, so it pops up pretty readily, which is nice.
Mhm.
And then what are they experiencing? It can be anything. A lot of these have lost parents or don't have relationship with parents, have had poor relationships with parents or were abused by their parents. Um, Family has died at young ages, so they've gone through a lot of grief in that way. Um, Drug addicts for a family, right? Just all of those deep traumas is typically what you're going to see in this woman. Some are struggling through addiction. Some are struggling with just sexual integrity in general, or they don't really know what sexual integrity is and they just sleep around and it's no big deal to them. And there's just a lot that they're walking through. But I would say most of the women that we serve has a pretty strong trauma background. So,
Mhm. There's a big need for help and support and love when you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, and there's that background of trauma. It's quite difficult
yeah,
sometimes to reach a mom in that state because there's just so much grief to process and so much heartache that they've already been through. And I think for a mom in that situation, it can be hard to trust other people who want to help her because she's seen other people not come through
yep.
for her before. So the ministry you guys offer is so essential to their healing. Because then when you guys keep repeatedly over and over and over showing them that grace and offering them an opportunity to see God's love in action, I think it's just so transformative. And a question that crosses my mind as I think about the demographic of women who may be homeless or close to it that will come to your facility. What is the relationship with the father of the baby? Because people do wonder that, like, well, why hasn't, the father stepped up more? And I'm sure there's a variety of answers to that in different situations.
Yeah, there is. I feel like a lot of time the response that we get on our applications, because that's one of the questions that we ask, is we want it to be better. This is where we're at, but we want it to be better. So most of the time they are not being supported heavily in that area, or they may feel like they're being supported, but they don't actually understand that they're not. So that is definitely a barrier where they foresee dad being involved and they kind of bank on it, but dad doesn't really want any involvement. At the time that I was in the home, I went through about 6 residents, and I'm trying to think. I think all of them, dad was not involved, and pretty much all of them underwent paternity testing so they could get specific benefits to really help them, because they have to prove that this is the dad and that dad doesn't want anything to do with it, and then they can get help from the government, right? And they all were kind of going that path because they wanted the extra money. So most of the time, really no. We do want to support dads that want to be involved though. So we heavily try to focus on that if they are supportive to them. We have male mentors that are available. Not many dads have ever really wanted that. Um, when they live in the house, we have very scheduled times that they can do visits in general, but very particular with baby daddy, we want them to have scheduled time while the house dad is there, because we feel like the house dad can speak into that a little bit more. It makes everyone feel more safe and comfortable. Some of these women have experienced trauma with the men, and so men are just not for them. And so having that safe environment is really important. And if we can foster it, great. But if not, we really say it's best to put down what you came into the house with, like just take a step back from that life, come in and focus on yourself. And if you can get yourself and yourself ready to be a mom, you can walk out of this whatever direction you want to go. But we really ask that they take a step back from the relationship, not completely, but just distancing themselves so they can really self focus, because they need that time before baby gets here. So,
Right. And what is the period of time that they will typically live in your facility?
it's a great question. They have the ability to live in our facility from whenever they get into the program. So as soon as they apply, do the first, second interview, and come in, up until 7 months postpartum. So they really do have a good time frame. They can potentially be there for a year. I would say most of them, kind of around the 3 month line, is what we see on average. There's been some that are days, some that are weeks. They're all different stories. We really believe in grace. And so dismissal is pretty rare for us unless we see that the heart is not wanting to change or wanting to participate. Because we are a program, we don't want to just offer housing. We want to offer a lifestyle change to these women, something that's going to be more transformative and long term. And so if we see consistent issues in complying to what has been asked of them, sometimes we have to bring that to the table and say, is this what you want, or can we find you somewhere else to go? Do we have that ability? And we'll work with our different resources to get them a better fit place for them.
Hmm.
But it's all based on their heart and how much they want it.
Hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I know that when I think I got to go tour the home with you once.
Yep.
When we were touring, something that you mentioned to me is that these women, you're preparing them for life without Family Life Center, for
Yeah.
them to be able to basically graduate and go on to the rest of their life as a mother, someone who's raising a small child. So what are some of those things that you guys do so that these women, when they're complete with the time at the maternity home, they're able to go on and really be more self-sufficient?
Yeah. We do something very specific called a goal setting. And this is kind of where it all starts. So, a goal setting is once a week. And we sit down and say, what goals do you have for the month? What goals do you have for the week? What do you need to get accomplished? And we really get down to business on structuring their day to day and giving them a little bit more structure than they're used to. And in the first goal setting, we want to identify, where's the woman at? Have they gotten their GED? Have they gotten their driver's license? Where do we see the most need for them? What kind of steps do they need to take to get prepared for baby? If they're 36 weeks when they come into our home, we need to start packing bags. We need to make sure we have everything ready. Do you have a birth plan? What does that look like? And just giving them the tools to get started towards their goals, and then giving them the time to set aside and just focus on themselves and their goals. So we really do that individualized based on where they're at and what they need. And that can look a couple different ways. So, like if a woman wants to be a cosmetologist, okay, well, let's get an idea of what the financials look like to go to school to be that. What is the time going to look like? Do you have a daycare that will be able to do those hours? So when your baby's here, you can continue in that education. And think about all the little details because they're not used to structuring and planning like that. They really just go on a whim and just go for what sounds good in the moment, but they don't always look at what are they going to need to accomplish that task without putting themselves in a worse place. So
Mhm.
we do that. We do some of the classes that we talked about earlier. And then counseling is a mandatory thing as well, getting them into a place where they can talk with somebody and really start to figure out some of that trauma that they've been dealing with.
And what is that process for therapy? Do you guys have like suggested therapists they go to? Do they get to like choose someone to see? And then like what are some of those goals you have for them in their counseling? Like to talk through maybe family issues or like issues with the father of the child?
Yeah, so we don't have necessarily a specific goal for their counseling. We just ask that they attend. In the past, we've had staff counselors, and we would just require them to see our staff counselor. Currently, we're kind of in limbo with that, but we are partnering with the church. Then we're hoping to continue in that partnership where they can go and they have more of a trauma background at that church. So they go and they get counseling there. Um, and yeah, just we like it to be more internal than external because what we find is they don't always know what the program's structured like as a counselor. And so they may suggest things or talk to these women and have ideas for them how to get past what they're working through. But sometimes it doesn't always comply and line up with what the program is doing. And so we want to keep it structured enough that it doesn't take them a step backwards in the program, but it at least keeps them moving forward and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, therapy is very transformative, and it's good that that's something that's important to your program because, of course, many of us have been through something in life where you've experienced trauma or just a difficulty of some kind that took special work to overcome. So it's really excellent that as you guys are, trying to help and support these mothers to, have a great life ahead of them. That of course there's that important part of goal setting and really planning for what's ahead. But then if there are those big and difficult emotional blocks where no matter
Yeah.
how much your goal matters to like becoming a cosmetologist, like you were saying, maybe that really matters to them, but there's just maybe so much trauma from how their parents treated them or something that went on with the dad with their baby, maybe that just, holds them back from doing what they really want to do. So by being able to get that help and support through counseling, hopefully that makes them even more capable of achieving the goals that are important to them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I cannot tell you how many times that we've had the same conversations over and over with the women because it's something that we see in them that they're struggling with. But then it finally gets broken down either between counselor or just the program, and it comes out this is what they're struggling with. And we saw the barrier first from an outsider perspective, but from an inside perspective, they just don't see it. They aren't able to correlate what's going on and why they're not able to meet their goals with the fact that they are working through these things. And so it's a setback for them. And it's really just like a lie the devil feeds to them about themselves, saying they're not the problem. It's just this, and this, right? But that's not always true. Sometimes we have to sanctify ourselves to get to where we're going. And I think that's where the barrier comes sometimes because sanctification is not really a word that they're used to or really understand the concept of, and learning how to break down some of what they're dealing with. So,
Yeah. The truth is, self-awareness is so hard for all of us, right? And I
yeah,
think when you're going through trauma, sometimes self-awareness feels dangerous.
yep,
I was listening to this podcast once. This woman ran this group called Claire Voyle or something like that, and she does a thing where they look at people's like passions and they set big goals and she does coaching for these goals, right? And she was talking about how she was in therapy herself for her marriage. And she said she was kind of told repeatedly by other people like that she was, I'm not sure what the word was, like kind of enabling or just like basically trying to mother everyone and fix everybody. And it was like hurting her relationships. But she would always be like, no, no, no. Like, just being told that was very hard to hear. And so it took like being in therapy, and then she eventually was able to grow in self-awareness. And she was talking about how we are all on that journey where sometimes we don't want to become self-aware of our own struggles, or hearing it from other people can sometimes come across wrong. So sometimes it takes the right thing in therapy, or somehow we grow in that self-awareness, and then we can finally overcome a big struggle. But I think for each of us, sometimes we'd rather sweep some stuff under the rug. We'd rather find a different cause for why things are going poorly. So it's beautiful that through the time at Family Life Center, these women, they're obviously going through a lot, but they can grow in so many different skills. And one of them is, those experiences of self-awareness and understanding the family they came from and the trauma and the wounds they have so that they can heal and be amazing moms to their baby and great members of their community. What
Yeah,
would you say?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say the relationships are like for these moms with their babies when they go to have their baby? Because, of course, this is a hard situation. They're possibly facing homelessness before living at Family Life Center. They've received the support and the resources they need now, thank God, to choose life and to, move forward with their pregnancy. So, what is that like for them to give birth and then they're bringing their baby home to a maternity home?
Yeah. I think most of the women try to get out before that point. I think they think it's going to be easier if they don't have a plan and a structure to go back to. But we do see a lot of the babies come into the home too. And what I typically see, or I think what we've seen as a whole at Family Life Center, is two reactions. They're either very detached and don't want a lot to do with the baby at hand, or they are very attached and it is very hard to separate them. It is very hard for them to get into the idea of babysitting or having to go to work or getting back into the program and taking a step back from baby, not because it's not beautiful, but because they have to continue doing things for themselves to serve their family. And even more so now that there's two people they're providing for rather than one, right? So we see both reactions. And I would say that in the first reaction, we tend to see um, those are the people that we question, like, should we have talked about adoption, or like, are
Mhm.
they going to be able to do this for themselves? And we will never put that idea in their head. We lay it all on the table of the idea of adoption with a book through Ann Pearson. She has a couple different books, and that's one of them. So we make sure all the women go through those books so they know that that is an option for them, and what that option looks like. But we know ultimately the mom has to make a decision for herself. And so it's all on her to make those decisions. We've had some women go through adoption and some just absolutely hate the idea of it. But then on the other side, the women that are very attached and hard to let go of these babies, we just see that they need a lot more education. They're very good at paying attention to baby, but they don't always know how to take care of babies. Co-sleep can be a really big thing sometimes in these facilities, and so making sure they understand what safe sleep is and how to protect their baby in that way. Learning how to feed is really difficult for them in different ways, either if it's breastfeeding or formula fed, doing the formula the right way, not like warming the bottle in the microwave, but alternative ways to warm the bottle. And just a lot of education goes behind that for us, where we're just teaching them as they go, and letting them know different options that they have and how to serve their baby. And then when we get to a point when they have to go back to work or school or whatever they're doing, where we say, okay, you have to start letting your baby go into daycare. This is how you're going to be able to provide for them, is they have to leave for a little bit so you can go to work, and that's a hard concept for them.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. I think for so many moms, especially like you mentioned those two different kinds of moms, right? Where there's maybe women who are going to be more naturally detached and then women who are
Yeah.
more lean towards the attachment, which I think from like psychology, they say that it's healthy motherhood is like the natural attachment, wanting to attach and then not wishing to attach to your baby unless it's a situation where they've already arranged, adoption and that's what they're planning on. that
Yeah.
sometimes that does show signs of attachment disorder to not want to be with your baby. So it's always a healthy and beautiful thing when mom's like, I want to spend as much time with my baby as I can. And
Mhm.
it is so tough what single moms go through
Yeah.
because it's just true. There's just that biological drive women have to spend as much time as possible with their babies and to love them and care for them. So what are some ways that Family Life Center promotes like mother and child attachment? Because of course it is going to be so difficult when that baby has to be cared for by a babysitter or by alternate caregiver so mom can work since she is a single mom. So what are some of the ways you guys promote secure attachment during those, first few weeks or months that she's there?
That's a great question. One thing that we're pretty big on is we don't really want to watch the baby as staff, so we try to put more on their plates, like it would be outside of the maternity home, right? We want them to feel like it's more them and baby. Like, don't get us wrong, we love to hold babies and we love to help, but we want to do it in a healthy amount. Like if it's you need to go get a quick shower and it's easier for someone to hold the baby, okay, we can do that. But if it's you're working on school and you still need to take care of your baby, like so we would have someone doing their GED with like a bouncer next to her and just kind of constantly bouncing the baby. And we do promote that. We do have childcare volunteers available too, so we can get to that point where, okay, you've been doing really well at this, but are we at a stage now where we should start getting that child into childcare, getting them exposed to other things, getting them exposed to being away a little bit from you and you a little bit from them. So when you get out of here, you can do what you need to do at the times you need to do it. So it's a healthy balance, starting with a yes, it's on you. We're not here to take care of your baby. We're here to just give tips and to just guide you. And then branching off into that, okay, now we're in a place where we have to start going the other direction and learning that it's okay to have our baby away for a couple hours too.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's amazing to think of all the sacrifices single moms make. Like just like you're saying, where she's doesn't have her GED yet, has not graduated from high school, and has given birth to this beautiful baby. And
Yeah.
possibly this child might be part of her motivation now to complete the GED and, make a change in her life. So then she's there, she's bouncing her baby and she's studying for
Yep.
these difficult exams. And I just think that it's so fascinating how it seems to really change some women's lives for better. Obviously, sadly not all women acclimate to motherhood. Some of them, there are some mothers in our world who unfortunately don't challenge themselves to be the mothers they should be. But in a lot of cases where unplanned pregnancy takes place, something I've noticed I think is so fascinating is many women, they rise to the occasion. So they go, okay, I haven't graduated from high school. Now I'm going to do this for my baby. I've heard some absolutely incredible stories of women saying like I had no motivation. I even had some like clinical depression and I had this child, and all of a sudden, I'm so motivated that I'm going to go achieve these goals because I want to create a life for my child. And even when it comes to, childcare arrangements, sometimes I think women have the motivation to achieve things in school or to achieve things at work so that they can maybe change their childcare situation so that they work hours where they're spending as much time with their baby as they can. And I just think single moms are so inspiring because
Yeah.
many of them do. They go and they adjust themselves so that they can become the best moms possible in a difficult situation. And they go and achieve these big things they would have never done if they didn't have their baby. Do you think you've
Mhm.
seen that at Family Life Center and with some of your moms?
Yeah, with some of our moms, I think when God says that children are a blessing, He truly means it. I think we know that when a baby is given to someone that's not taken lightly, that there's something very divine behind that. And so, yeah, God is trying to use this for the good in the woman's life. Sometimes just because God does use something for the good doesn't always mean that our heart's going to respond to it. So there's those moms too, right? Where they want the title of mom, but they're not able to really take care of the baby, and that's okay. Um, but there's a lot of moms who they get this blessing and they realize that it's a treasure as soon as they look them in their eyes, and they can rise up, as you said, to accomplish what they need to accomplish and allow that child to sanctify them, because that's really what children do for us. And even me, who's not a trauma mom of three kids, my children are sanctifying me every single day. And I
Mhm.
think that's what they do for these women.
Yeah, it's incredible. I remember hearing a mom who, not a single mom, she was married and she had two kids, and she's talking about how, like, God has these incredible eternal purposes in sanctifying parents through their kids. And she was talking about how, like, she had this fear of having children for a very long time.
Mm.
And then once she did have her kids, she realized, like, this is a gift to me, like an incredible gift from God, but also like that she realized she shouldn't have feared the sanctification God was going to bring through her kids because it did make her better, helped her grow as a person in all kinds of ways she did not anticipate at all. So, yeah, just like you said, children are an absolutely incredible gift, and that's true even when they come in unexpected situations. The
Yeah.
abortion industry, they spend a lot of time trying to convince us that women will have children in difficult situations and that therefore they have to have abortions, or we're somehow promoting poverty, or we're promoting bad situations for mothers for their whole life, not just for a season. And I think the ministry of Family Life Center proves the opposite, that women who are facing some of the most difficult circumstances possible, like homelessness, it'd be very, very difficult for me to imagine being
Yeah.
homeless and pregnant. Like that's just terrifying. Um, the abortion industry would say, well, clearly abortion needs to exist so we can quote unquote prevent poverty. But destroying a child through abortion just sends the mother back to the street. She's still homeless at the end of that. She's still, struggling through the trauma that was a part of that at the end of the abortion. Versus,
Mm.
when a mom comes to you guys at Family Life Center and she completes her application and she's accepted into the program, now she is going to have this baby. She's going to be a mother and she's going to start setting these goals and going to therapy, and there's going to be healing and like generational change that may not have occurred otherwise. So it's incredible that through a situation that may have been unintended in the mind of the mother, God is bringing transformation and redemption to her entire family.
Yeah. And really, like, pro-life, when you become passionate about it, and you can be pro-life and not be passionate, and that's okay because we're all a body of Christ. We all have different roles and different parts, and you still will act on it when you need to, but you don't have to be in the industry. But in the industry, it's amazing how much people see pro-life as a just make the decision to save your baby and that's all you are. No, we are activists, right? Like we have a passion for what we do. It's never just save this baby and that's our win. No, it's a follow through every single time. Sometimes it's hosting baby showers, sometimes it's providing, sometimes it's getting them to the resources, sometimes it's being the resources. And what pro choice people aren't aware of most of the time is how many resources are available to these women. And that's what we want the women to know. Because if they don't know that, they don't feel like they can make the choice. But if they see that and they have that, they are more likely to, right? Because we have Alpha downtown that does something similar where they help give you points and get diapers or needs that you have. PRC helps you with those kind of things. Family Life Center also has a blessing center that they have 24/7 access to. So after you're out of the house, or if you've chosen life for your child, you need diapers and wipes, they're available. You need some baby food, it's available. There's clothes. We have a plethora of resources to continue on your path and where you're going and heading the right direction versus just save the baby and that's all we care about, right?
Right. And that's what you do every single day. You're literally the living proof that the claims of the abortion industry are a lie, that we're
Mhm.
anti-choice and we're just going to, try to make the mother have this baby and then leave her in a horrible situation. Every single day, the work Family Life Center is doing is showing the exact opposite. And it's
Yeah,
important to point out that the abortion industry doesn't have something to show for that. So if they're so pro-woman, where is their maternity home? Where is their pregnancy center? They don't
right.
have one. They have abortion clinics that violently dismember children. They do not offer parenting classes. And their quote unquote family planning, they do not teach people to plan their families. They teach them to destroy them through abortion. So it's just a world of difference. And they spend a lot of time accusing us that we do not have genuine motives to really help women. But then when we go deep and we have a conversation like this one and we talk about the very, very detailed help given to
Yeah.
mothers, it shows that their argument doesn't hold a candle to the reality that the
Yep.
help offered to these women is absolutely transformative.
Yeah. Just preparing for this, I was looking it up. I'm just so curious, like how many maternity homes are there? Well, there's about over 400 in the US alone.
Wow.
And then in Michigan, I'm thinking, oh, I think we're the only one. No, I found 9 different websites that are all Christian based maternity homes with similar structure to us, where they are programs and they are speaking into the women and they're showing them the truth in the word. And it's just so interesting that yeah, that's the argument that's chosen is we don't care because It's the very opposite. We care so much that we're going to fight for the truth in the situation, and we're going to keep walking alongside the women, right? One of the ways we do this too is we have an aftercare program for family life centers. So everyone that's been in the home, we continue to contact them weekly, talk about their needs, talk about where they're at. Some of our volunteers just kind of leave with the women, and it sucks for us as volunteers, but it also is so great for these women because they need the community. So
Mhm.
we have people come having them over for dinner. We have people who are helping them move from location to location or doing different things with them on a monthly basis and just sticking with them. We have a Christmas party we do every year. They come back. This year we had like 25 women come back. We do adopt a family if they want to participate, where we can help provide for the holiday season and have families come in and take care of them that way. And we're not come here and this is it. This is come here. Let's make a relationship. Let's be part of your community and let's strengthen that moving forward in every direction.
Wow, that kind of community is so rare, especially in our social media day and age. People don't have friends a lot of times. A lot of times they do
Yeah.
not have community, don't have people in their corner. But then when they come and be a part of your ministry, it's not just, those 9 months or whatever it is that they're living there, whatever specific length of time.
Mhm.
It's long-term support, which is so incredible.
Yeah.
So, what would you say, Kim, if you knew that right now a woman was listening in and she was facing the type of circumstances that bring women in through your doors? Maybe she's either homeless completely, living on the street, or she has some kind of housing insecurity that makes it clear to her she's going to need a maternity home in order to, continue her pregnancy. Let's say she's 5 or 6 or 7 weeks and she's pretty early on and she knows she needs help. What would be your message to her?
I think the easy choice for her to do is to walk into that clinic and take that baby's life, right? Easy in the moment. And what you won't see in that time when you make that decision is all the things that are going to come to follow: the mental health issues, the physical issues, the complications, the possibility of never getting pregnant again if you want to. That's going to come. And you're also getting rid of God's blessing, right? You're taking away this opportunity for yourself that God has given you. But the hard choice is really looking past the here and now, seeing your baby for who they truly are growing inside of you, seeing that life from conception, and saying, I am going to take care of this person no matter what it costs. And moving forward to do the hard work, to change who they are so that they can parent the child living within them. I think that's the harder choice, and they know that, but the harder choice prevents a lot more heartache. So while it looks harder in the here and now, it's actually like future driven, and it's way more easier long term. And so not having that instant solution is going to benefit and grow them and strengthen them.
Yeah. And that support is there. You guys are
Mhm.
ready with your arms open to help them face really scary circumstances. And I appreciate how you put that in the moment that abortion does actually seem like an easier choice
Yeah.
because the idea of becoming a parent and of raising a child in a difficult situation, it is so hard. Like my heart goes out to those women and I definitely validate their concern that it's going to be very, very challenging, but also that they're very, very capable. So much
Yeah.
more capable than the abortion industry would ever leave them thinking. Because one thing that's so bizarre about the abortion industry is that they claim to be feminists and they claim they're so pro-woman and they're activists and they're whatever. And they actually really try to convince women that they're not capable, that they can't be a mom, they will never do well in their career or in school as a result of having this child. And the truth is, women are very capable. And God, when He gives us a child, He doesn't just leave us, abandoned. Like He really provides for us and He's really going to see us through. And that's true for moms in the hardest circumstances. And one of the ways God provides is through ministry like yours.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I would love to kind of pivot our conversation just a little because I know that you have a new role now at Family Life Center. And you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that you've experienced miscarriage yourself. And I'm so sorry you've gone through that because it's just devastating to lose a baby. And every single child is so precious, no matter how long they live. I was talking to a woman at my church, and she runs the children's ministry. So obviously, really loves kids. And something she told me is, people have a lot of assumptions about other people's family planning. Like she has 3 children. and they're all boys and they're all grown up now, or most of them are like in teens. And she was telling me that people assume she only want to have three kids. And then she mentioned like, she had these miscarriages and people would say extremely dismissive things to her, like, well, at least they died, blah, blah, like just things that were
Mm.
extremely hurtful. But even if a child only lives, say, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, that's still your son or daughter.
Yeah.
That's, your baby and someone that you miss and that you care so immensely about. And like mothers do, there's mothers when they are in their healthiest state are so sacrificial for their children. And, she was the kind of woman who would have done anything to save those babies if it had been possible, and they just passed away naturally. And so it makes me so sad when I realize what women go through when they experience miscarriage and how dismissive people are of their grief and how they say weird things that are very invalidating, that are not helpful, not supportive. And so I think of that woman that I know, and then I know that you have a story too with miscarriage. And I would just be curious about your journey into, obviously you've had your own miscarriages you've gone through, and now you help other women who are facing that. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. It was obviously not part of my plan for myself, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, it was a little difficult when we first started to want to have a baby. We did everything the right way. You know, you wait and then, oh, we're going to finish school and oh, we're going to establish our career and then okay, now's the right time to have a kid. And it took us a little bit of time to get pregnant, and then we do, and we lost it right away.
Awesome.
And that was a real hit in the face, I think. In as I'm grieving that, I did a couple different things to process it, and went down to a friend's college. She was in Athnos 360 at a Christian college. And I was like, I just need to get away for a weekend, and went there and was doing some devotions. And the Lord had oddly told me I was pregnant again. And I didn't really believe it because I'm like, I just miscarried. There's no way. And I kind of kept praying over that. And here I was a couple days later in my car and praying, and the song came on by Dan and Goki that says, "You just haven't seen it yet." And I'm like, Lord, I am pregnant again, aren't I? And so he tells me this, and I take a test, and I'm positive, and it's been 5 weeks to the day that I've miscarried. So I'm shocked. And we do the test. They want us to do the HCG since we were just went through the process. So we do an HCG. It was whatever. The second HCG though, like nothing. And I was like, Lord, why in the world would you want me to know this if I'm just going to lose this baby again? Because we spoke over it, and I still went through that process of miscarrying that second baby, and I really just said, God, why? And he was very clear with me. He said, because you might not understand it right now, but I'm gonna use this. And so in my heart, I knew that women, children, miscarriages, that is where God was going to lead me one day. And I just didn't know when. And then, yeah, we unfortunately experienced a few more, and a lot of just random pregnancy grief too, just the pains of childbearing that we talk about in Genesis 3. And it's been a process for us, and it's been always hard to conceptualize because we have the three kids and we would love more, but my body just doesn't do well with it. I've had the preeclampsia postpartum twice. We had a child that was born with cancer, and just random things that have happened that we're like, it is not good for our family to go down this road anymore. And honestly, I grieve that because I'm like, well, three kids, I don't feel like I'm done, but I forget so often that I have these four beautiful kids in heaven. And if you ask my daughter, she tells me I have six. So she knows something I don't know. But and God has revealed that to me. He would even revealed the name of my first child to me, and that it was a boy, even though he passed away at 6 weeks in the womb. And that his name was Zechariah. And so God is so faithful through those processes that we might not understand, and we might not be able to see that that is our family. But really, I have seven kids, and that's a crazy thought to think about, but being able to recognize that in myself, and now going to others and saying, we need to recognize this more. It's something as a church we miss. And if we've never really experienced it, we don't understand the gravity of it. Um, and so we just tend to say those insensitive things, but we're not realizing how insensitive they are in the moment. And honestly, if I look back, I think I've thought that or said that to somebody prior to my whole experience. So I understand the where it comes from. But yeah, it's not better that they're gone in any way. It's just simply I'm sorry for your loss, just like any other person who's lost a person, right? If you've lost a mom, a dad, a sister, a sibling, whatever, it's just, I'm
Mhm.
sorry for your loss. And then what my role is with the Family Life Center is to come in, speak with churches or organizations that are pro life or support life and recognize that that was a human life that was lost, and teaching, educating, plus giving resources on how to walk alongside women and families. Because the other thing we do as a culture is we say this is the woman's baby. The men don't have a choice, the men aren't involved, right? But the idea of that is not really true. A lot of these families experience miscarriages. The men are very heavily grieving, but they don't even know how. They haven't been taught. They believe it has to be hidden. And so, speaking into both the women, the family, the men, grandparents sometimes, I know for me, with my third miscarriage, my fourth miscarriage, my daughter was really concerned, like, why are you so upset, mom? And so 3 years old, we had to have a conversation of like what mommy was walking through. Um, and she had to process that too. And I saw it in different ways. And so giving resources to these children who are experiencing the losses of their siblings and really being able to speak into that as a church as a whole.
Yeah. So important. And you
Yeah.
mentioned all these different people that are impacted by the loss of a baby. And it's so many people. You said it's your own daughter who's little. She's 3 years old at that time, grandparents, dad.
Yeah.
What is your advice to someone who is listening and who is impacted by miscarriage? So maybe mom or dad to start.
Um, it's a good question. I always tell my moms that I work with, I say, find the resources and then use them if you need it, right? Just know that the resources are available. They're hard to find sometimes. So that's what my program does is it puts it all in a box, like has a bunch of grieving resources, a devotion, a candle, different sensory items so they can grieve that person. So have the resources in front of you and then it's going to look different for every woman. Just use them when you're ready because you will have to grieve it at some point. You are going to need something, but use it when you're ready and know that just God didn't intend this for you. He may use it for the good, but it was never intended by Him. Because we also get into that mindset of God did something to us, but God didn't do anything to us. The enemy did, the one that comes to kill, steal, and destroy, the one that takes life every single time. And so we can't let that falter our understanding of who the Lord is too.
Mhm.
And for men, I think their biggest need is to start vocalizing it. Start understanding that you have lost a child, even if you didn't physically have that baby, and talk about it because there are so many men that aren't talking about it. And as soon as you do, you're going to start hearing stories and realizing that you are not the only one feeling this way. You boxed it up, you put it away, and it doesn't need to be that way. There's some really good devotions out there. One particularly that I use for the men is called Ours, written by a pastor who processed his miscarriage from his wife just years later, and what that looked like for him. So,
Do you know the author of that book?
his name is Eric something. I think it's co-authored. Let me see here. And then for the women, I normally do Loved Baby Devotion by Sarah Philpott is one of the best devotions out there for women who are experiencing the loss. Um, okay, so it's called Ours Biblical Comfort for Men Grieving Miscarriage by Eric Shoemaker.
Okay.
Um, for children, I typically use the book The Moon is Always Round. That one is kind of written by a dad who experienced the loss of a baby at 39 weeks and had a 4 year old that was processing it alongside them and saw the crib go up and saw all the things happening. And dad would say, well, what shapes the moon? And he'd say a crescent shape. And he said, no, the moon is always round. And when the funeral part comes to the book, he says, son, what does that mean? God is always good. Yeah. We
Mm.
may not always see it. We might only see part of the moon, but God is always good. And then lastly, one of the best books that I found for stillbirth is called A Brave Lament. It's a couple. who wrote it also lost their baby at 39 week, and they just lament to the Lord because guess what? It's okay to do. It is totally okay to just let it all out to the Lord. He can handle it. And that was a big part of their process. And I think that's all part of a lot of stillborn moms as well as miscarriage moms process. So,
It is so devastating to lose a baby. I cannot even imagine the incredible pain that you have been through, your husband has been through, your family, your daughter, just and just people in general who lose a child because rather if it's like 5 weeks or if it's 39, it is so incredibly hard to lose a member of your family, your own child. It's just
mhm.
devastating. Have you had any women in that situation who maybe were living at Family Life Center? So maybe a woman who would face an unplanned pregnancy and then she's planning, for parenting and then maybe sadly loses the baby.
So we've had some applications that we'll contact, and I had one probably about a year ago that specifically said I actually have miscarried since I put that in, and so I like that I was the one being able to take the phone call and just being able to relate and speak into her and her life and what she needs. But we did do once where the house was empty and we had one person who was staying who miscarried, and we let them stay a little bit longer. We probably wouldn't have if we had more women in the house that were pregnant because we think that might have been worse for her. But God had just timed it out really perfectly where there weren't others in the house. And so we could really speak into her specifically without having that extra burden on her. We have had one woman, yeah, that has experienced that and got to stay a little bit longer in the house with us so we could speak into it.
Mhm. It's beautiful that you made space for her as she's grieving and
Yeah.
really just loved on her because I cannot imagine what that must have been like because that's just a completely different kind of grief too, where you were maybe grieving becoming a mom because you weren't expecting to. So your
Hmm.
life was really changing. And then you accepted it and you're like, okay, I'm a mom now and I'm going to change my whole entire life to do the best I can to take care of this baby. And then the baby sadly passes away. And that's
Yeah.
kind of a demographic we don't discuss a whole lot in the pro-life movement, but it is out there where some
Yeah.
women will choose life and then sadly they may miscarry, which just kind of is like this doubly compounding grief
Yeah.
where she adjusted her life for this child and then the child sometimes passes away naturally, which is super sad. So I'm glad that your ministry is out there to offer women support if it was an unplanned pregnancy or a very hoped for pregnancy, either way, that there is hope and support through their grief and through the heartache of experiencing miscarriage.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
there any particular message you have to people who are grieving the loss of a miscarriage and who might be feeling very hopeless or very unsupported as they go through that?
Honestly, it's just that there is hope, right? Um, because beyond what we see right now, we have children living in heaven. And one day I believe that I just going to arrive there and there are going to be four little kids just running up to me that I don't even know. And I didn't until just recently when the Zechariah was revealed to me, even know the gender of these kids. And now I know that I have a son waiting for me on top of it. And so there is hope and that God, he sees you, he hears you, he never wanted this for you. Um, but know that it's not done. It's not over. Those children are waiting for us on the other side. And we will get to see the full picture of it one day.
Yeah. Every child is a gift, even the ones that only live a little while. That they
Yeah,
truly they bless our world even when they only stay for a little while. So thank you for sharing your story because it's
thanks.
not easy and grief is very vulnerable. It really is. When we experience loss, it can be difficult to share our stories because it kind of opens our hearts in a way that it's easier to self-protect when we don't share
Mhm.
those stories. So I appreciate that you have chosen to serve other people out of the grief and the difficulty that you've experienced as you've gone through miscarriage. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can think of many examples of this happening. I know we just talked about it briefly with my friend and the very bizarre things people would say to her and still do, probably 20 years after her miscarriage,
Mm-hmm.
where they say things like, well, that's probably for the best, or just things that are extraordinarily dismissive and like compound the grief. What would you say to people like me? I've never had a pregnancy before, so I may not be as sensitive. I've never had a miscarriage before. I may not be naturally understanding
Yeah.
of what it's like to go through that. What are some things that it would be good to avoid saying so we don't cause more unnecessary grief, and some things that it's helpful to say to someone who has experienced the loss of their baby in the womb.
Yeah. I actually have a resource on this. So I'm trying to think back because it's been a minute since I've looked at it. But really, the focus is going to be on the loss and not the what could have, should have, would have. So a lot of people tend to say, well, at least you lost them in the first trimester, or there was probably something wrong with them, or you can always have another, you can get pregnant, those kind of things. Well, because even like the you can get pregnant, it seems encouraging, right? But really, you are degrading what's happened to them. You're not acknowledging the loss. And in Christianity, we tend to go towards pro life. So if we're pro life and we're saying that that baby was a baby as soon as conception, why are we saying things like that? Why are we not recognizing the life that's been lost there? So just taking a minute to stop and recognize there's a life that was lost here. And yeah, having those harder conversations like, how are you doing? I am so sorry for your loss. Do you need help with the kids? Do you need us to bring you some meals while you're walking through this? Do you need, can I come clean your house? Do you have appointments that you have to go to? Do you have babysitters? What do you need? Just like any other loss, right? If your father died, or if your sibling died, or if your child died and they were born here on earth, those are the kind of things that we would do to walk through this. You're going to do the same things. You're going to support them in the same way. Is it food? Is it cleaning? Is it resource? Like, what do you need? And I'm so sorry that you're experiencing that.
I appreciate how you emphasize that any comment starting with at least is probably not the right way. We're probably not headed the right direction in this conversation. Pretty much every time I've heard someone use those phrases, I'm like, oh no, just maybe close your mouth. Don't even say that one. That's not going to help. But yeah, it is such a tough thing to walk through this kind of loss. And you're right that it's down to those basic things. Can I help you clean? Can I watch your children? Like it, because I think people really complicate trying to support someone in grief and they start like, oh, this is really complicated. Like they make it so extreme in their mind of how they must have to help, but it can be so simple. Can I
Yeah.
bring food over?
And
Okay.
another thing I think people forget is that means if you catch them at the right time, they're physically walking through a loss right now, right? We hate periods as women, don't we? Like they suck. They are not great. But a miscarriage is worse, right? Because a miscarriage is a period on steroids is the best way to describe it because you have products, you have conception products that are trying to come out, a lot more bleeding, a lot longer time span at time, very heavy. Some women have to go in the hospital for it. For me personally, I had an emergent DNC on my third miscarriage because I just was bleeding too heavily and I needed 2 units of blood. And so there was a whole different process that I was walking through of I need people to help watch my kids. I needed to go in the hospital for 24 hours. So many things that I just needed support in physically too. And
Mhm.
my husband was great at that. And sometimes if they have a partner that's willing to be there, that's helpful. But not everyone has that. Slash, not sometimes it's just not an option, right? Sometimes you need more people to come in and support and be there for that woman while they're going through that experience physically too.
Right. It's such a painful process physically in many cases for moms, and my heart goes out to them. I just
Mhm.
had the experience recently where I got trained to the OB floor, and so I did not expect that sometimes I would see miscarriages. I mean, it seems obvious that you would, but I just didn't think about that. And it was just so tragic. And even just starting to understand some of what the mother had gone through, where whenever you give birth or you have a miscarriage, either way, like you have to complete the process of birth. And sometimes a mother's placenta won't come out, or just like different things happen where sometimes now not only are we tragically passing this baby's body out of your body, but now sometimes it's like, okay, we have to very quickly go in and we have to help your body to remove the placenta, remove these remaining pregnancy tissues because your baby, sadly, their heart is not beating, they've passed away. But your body is not fully getting the message sometimes that this loss
Yeah.
has occurred. So yeah, it's such a unique form of grief and loss. And part of how we can honor the value of all human lives is by recognizing the enormous loss that is miscarriage. Because I think it's actually like maybe secretly like almost like pro-choice thinking that leads us to invalidate people after
Yeah.
miscarriage. Because when I was talking to my friend who'd experienced these several miscarriages, I was like, it is not pro-life at all to talk about your child like they were not human because they happened to pass away early. Because
Yeah.
even in the first trimester, that's a human being. We all had to survive the first trimester to make it to any other point in human development. And we were not human then just because some losses happened at that time.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, every person in our communities, your own mom, friends around you, whoever it is that might be going through a pregnancy loss, like everybody deserves love and support and the utmost care that we can show them.
Yeah.
So, thank
In
you.
remembering, it's kind of a hefty amount of people, right? So they say 25% of pregnancies end in loss.
Wow.
Um, and so that equates to 1 in 4 women. So you can be in a room of women, and let's say there's 50 of you, it's like 10 to 12 of you have sat there and gone through this process and really understand that. And that's hard. I mean, that's a loss of a child that 12 of you out of the 50 have lost a child. That's a lot. It's heavy for sure.
It's huge. What would you say the grief has looked like for you as you've gone on to more years of your life? Because, of course, people, it seems like they might be more likely to seek help in the immediate aftermath of a loss. But then, life goes on and you maybe start to pass dates that you remember, like maybe being in the hospital to be treated for your miscarriage, or, maybe the child's due date continues to pass year by year. How have you processed grief and how do you encourage other people as new grief might hit throughout the years of your child's absence?
Yeah. So the first year is just like any other grief. We always say that first year is hard to get over. The milestones, the holidays hit hard. Your due date will hit especially hard. Most women know it and they don't forget it for a while. Some will just hold on to it. I don't know if it's by the grace of God or just me, but I honestly, I only remember a little bit of the due dates. And sometimes I feel guilty about it, but I don't think we're meant to because the same thing happens with regular grief. My husband's dad passed away last year, and those memories do start to fade. Time does actually heal. And that can be a sad and hard thing to hear sometimes, but it also helps because it is God's grace. It is God's grace saying we don't have to live in that,
Mm,
and we can move forward. But it's okay to remember what happened to you still. It's still okay to know that. So I think time has truly healed in that way. And then I told you, yeah, about Zechariah being revealed to me recently, and that was within the last month. So I mean, it's been 5, almost 6 years since that miscarriage, and God decided to give me that information. And so God also just has such a sweet and graceful way of blessing us in our experience.
mm,
And if he wants something for us, he's gonna let us know. He's gonna bring us the hope and the things he wants for us. So I think that's really beautiful. Um, and now it's more so just I have 4 beautiful babies in heaven
mm,
to get to see one day. And I don't know what that looks like for me. And I need to be more in that mindset of you have 7 children, you don't have 3 children. So sometimes I tell people, I say, well, I have 3 children and 4 beautiful babies in heaven. That's part of how I describe myself and just normalizing that a little bit more because they'll ask the questions and now you have a chance to talk about it, which testimony always helps with grief, I think, too.
mm,
Sharing an experience and empathy. And then honestly, it reaches women that are maybe experiencing something similar. And there's a whole new type of healing that comes through that. So being in this position to serve women and families who are experiencing it has been life changing in that way, right? Because now I've gotten to a place where my grief isn't as large, but it's almost more so healing to walk through this again with other people because you know that it had a purpose and a plan and it wasn't wasted.
mm. It's so true. I often think of the quote from Corey Ten Boom. She says, "Every experience God gives us, every person He puts in our lives, is the perfect preparation for the future only God can see." And somehow that includes our losses too, as difficult as they are. So thank you
Right.
for
And she had an incredible testimony. I mean, she shook the hand of someone from the concentration camp that killed her family, right? Like she got to walk in that forgiveness and walk that out. And yeah, so that's some strong words coming from her.
it's true. She grieved so much, didn't she? She suffered incredibly. Her own father was murdered in a concentration camp, or he died of an illness. Either way, it was just like
Yeah.
knowing someone
Yep.
so close to her, so loved, just there were so many ways she could have been bitter, but instead she chose to see it as God is working in my grief and God is working in my loss. So
Yeah.
very true. Well, thank you, Kim, so much for joining the podcast today. We've talked about so many important things today about maternity homes, Family Life Center, and their particular ministry and the incredible ways they help moms. We've also talked about miscarriage and how people can process their grief. It's such a sacred thing and also very difficult that many women and men walk through. So I would love to hear what your final thoughts are for our listeners as we wrap up this conversation on any of those topics.
Life is so precious. It's just so precious. And, in the monotony of the day to day, we can forget how sacred God truly established it to be because it is so ridden with just hardship and sin that He never intended for us. And I think it's Deuteronomy 28 that says it best, where it gives what life versus death looks like. And it just says, choose life. And I think we can do that as pro-life advocates as well. We choose life, and we try to convince these women to see that way too. But also when it comes to miscarriages, to just choose life, acknowledge the life that has been lost, and how to bring it kind of full circle and come to the other side of the testimony where you can help support other people that are walking through it. We don't have to sit there in our grief and our darkness, but we can sit there in life and having peace in those situations.
That's so true. Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.